Have you ever felt like no one hears you, or that your words don't come out the way that you want them to? Or maybe you feel like you have to hide your voice or parts of yourself. So if you've experienced any of these, this may be a sign that your throat chakra is imbalanced. It can also be seen through tension in the jaw, feeling like it's difficult to express yourself, or feeling like you're silenced in some of your relationships. So if you are feeling like that is you, you are in luck, because tonight we are going to talk about simple ways, from mundane to magical techniques, that you can use to balance your throat chakra. So merry meet, I'm Aislin, this is Ask Aislin, and tonight I'm here talking about how to balance your throat. So welcome to those who are joining us live. Say hi in the chat and let us know that you are here with us live. We're going to dive in because we have a lot to cover tonight, but as always, leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in this video, and that will help us get this out to the feed of more people. If you are with us live, we'll have a Q&A at the end, so you can leave your questions and comments in the chat, and I will answer those all at the end. And even if you're watching back in replay, I will go back later after the live, and I will answer any questions that people leave in replay. So let's first start by diving in and talking about the throat chakra. What is the throat chakra? So the throat chakra's name in Sanskrit is Vishuddha, and this translates, depending on which translation you're looking at, it translates into purification, purity, genuine. Vishuddha itself means pure, and then when we put the part on the end of it, it means particularly pure, or especially pure. And so sometimes people wonder what this means. Some of the other chakras is a little easier to understand what their Sanskrit names translate into. For this one, according to yogic teachings, the body is required to be in a pure state before we can open up this in particular chakra. And so what that means is that people who are skipping the practices of the lower chakras, or have a lot of blockages and imbalances in your lower chakras, are going to have more difficulty opening up the throat. So this tells us, the chakra system itself is not in isolation, and that we can't just focus on one chakra and expect that to work. So if you are somebody who is perpetually having problems with your throat chakra, or some of these things that we're going to talk about tonight, which are indications that you have imbalances in your throat, I would suggest not just focusing here, but also exploring what is going on in your lower chakras and what's going on in your body and in your emotions. And so if we are not eating enough, or we're not taking care of ourselves, or we're eating the wrong foods for our bodies, we're not sleeping, we're not doing self-care, we're having difficulties with our emotions or feeling our emotions, then we may need to explore some of these lower chakras and work on balancing them, kind of working on balancing the body, and then we'll find that we have greater ease in balancing the throat. Now, tonight's episode is going to focus specifically on the throat, but just keep that in mind. It's always good for you to explore what's going on underneath it. Now, in Kundalini yoga, it is said that the throat chakra can become especially blocked through guilt. So that is something to also consider. Where in your life do you feel guilt? What do you have reasons to feel guilty? Are you carrying guilt from the past that maybe is something that could be released, or could be dissipated over time, but you're still carrying it? That can also get in the way of your throat chakra. So consider any of those places or situations where you may be carrying guilt in from. So the symbolism of the throat chakra is a blue triangle surrounded by 16 purple petals. And it's said that these 16 petals, sometimes when you see the design, they'll have like a vowel sound written into them. And each one represents one of the 16 vowels in Sanskrit. Vowels in Sanskrit carry great energy. And so you're going to find one way that we can balance the throat chakra is through chanting some of these sacred vowels and these sacred sounds. And we'll talk about that later. Now, the throat chakra is associated with the element Akasha in Sanskrit. This translates to ether in English. And eventually it was sort of changed into space. So like not space, outer space, but the space around us, where things manifest, where things can happen, where things can change. Now, from a witchcraft or a pagan perspective, we would probably say that this element is the element of spirit, the element that connects us to all of the other elements, and in fact gives birth to the other elements, which is also what it's said in yogic tradition. So the throat chakra is considered one of two creative chakras that you have in the body. The first one being your sacral chakra. The sacral chakra is very much about creating within the physical plane, and the throat chakra is very much about creating in the etheric plane or the spiritual plane. It helps us to connect to the etheric plane, which is the place where our magic and our rituals take place. So if you are having trouble in your rituals or your magic, if you're having trouble getting into it, if you're having trouble kind of feeling it, if you're having trouble with spells of any kind, looking and working with the throat chakra can be important, because again, it is the key to opening up your ability to move in and out of that etheric plane, which is where all your magic is taking place. Now, some say the throat chakra is also considered the gateway between the conscious and the unconscious. So, when we have great blockages in the throat, we may have trouble moving things from the unconscious to the conscious. And so, for this reason, balancing the throat chakra can be an important aspect of our shadow work, because in order to do our shadow work, we must bring things out of the unconscious into clear view so we can work on them. So let us talk about some of the themes of the throat chakra. But before I do, I'm going to check out the chat and see who is here and say hi to you guys. So Merry Meet to Rebecca and Chelsea and Curtis here. Merry Meet to everyone. And hopefully more will join us as well. Some of you may know that there are some difficulties with the way that Facebook Lives are feeding, and they're not going through the invites where they were originally written, or where they're originally supposed to feed. I'll talk more about this at the end, and how you as viewers can help me out. But let's talk about the themes. So the themes of the throat chakra are communication, speaking your truth, and creativity. We would say are the three main themes of this chakra. Now, blockages, as I said before, guilt and shame that you're carrying in from any space can create blockages in the throat chakra. Not being listened to as a child or as an adult at any point in your life, if you're not listened to, it's going to create complications in the throat, but especially as a child. Having your reality questioned, especially as a child, can cause complications here. So many people who are spiritual, magical people who come to this path of witchcraft or paganism, will find that they grew up in spaces where not everybody had viewed the same reality that they did. So children who are very magical, who can see through the veils, who have certain gifts, different clairs that were operating when they were children, are often shut down by adults around them who can't see any of that stuff or can't experience it, because they themselves have blocked it out as they grew. And as magical children or spiritual children, sometimes, I should say probably more than sometimes, very often, we experience that, and then we're going to have these kind of clamping down of our own gifts and our own abilities. And this can greatly impact the throat chakra and your ability to manifest a life that you want later, as you're an adult. So contemplating some of that in your shadow work can be very helpful. What were the messages when you were growing up about you, about reality? Were you a kid who saw through the veils? Were you a kid who had some gifts from an early age that people didn't help you foster, or even worse, kind of shut them down? We're going to create great energetic blockages in the body, but especially here in the throat. So another area where the throat can become impacted is through lies. So both those that we tell and those that are told to us. So if you are somebody who was a victim of a lot of lies, that's going to impact your throat. If you are somebody who tells a lot of lies or told a lot of lies, that's also going to impact your throat. And so sometimes people will say, oh, no, 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 I don't tell any lies ever. But the reality is that we all tell untruths. So if the word untruth makes you feel better about it, the idea here is that we have to own up to the way that we live. So even the untruths that we tell, like the white lies that we tell that are necessary or feel necessary for either our protection or the protection of somebody else, or to stop conflict from happening or prevent conflict, any of this can create impacts in the throat chakra. Now, sometimes the white lies are necessary, right? Sometimes it's for our own protection or for somebody else's protection. But what I always find is that when I have to tell a white lie like that, it's going to be important for me to go and then do some work with my throat chakra to try to kind of counteract any imbalances I may create in it through what I have said. Because in my center, I know, like in my center, I know that what I've said isn't true. And so we get this conflict that we have to resolve. And so one way we can resolve it is through opening up the throat and working with it. So I'm not going to get into a lot of this tonight, but I wanted to just mention briefly how to kind of know if your throat chakra is excessive versus restrictive or deficient. So an excessive throat chakra is usually seen in people who are talking very defensively. So if you find that you are always defending yourself, or even when there isn't something to defend yourself against, you still feel like you're talking defensively or feel like you have to defend yourself, then this can indicate that you have excessive energy in your throat chakra. And the way that the chakras work is that they don't just completely get shut down. So when people say my throat chakra is completely shut down, it's not true. There's no possible way that you can't have any energy moving through your energetic system. But it's like it's a stream of water that has now been narrowed into a much smaller stream, and there's less space for that energy to go through. And that's what we're going to perceive as a restrictive energy. Or sometimes there's too much energy going through that, and that's what we're going to perceive as an excessive energy, like I'm mentioning here. So other ways that excessive energy can play out is in controlling conversations. So if you are somebody who kind of always has to have the last word there, or you need to control the direction of that conversation, then you may have excessive energy in your throat chakra, which you're going to want to bring into balance. Also, the inability to listen. So if you find that you're talking over other people, or you begin to talk before they have ended, or something like that, that can also be excessive energy. Also, having a very loud voice, much louder than everybody else, to get that voice heard up and over other people. And usually, where all this comes from is it's some way that we have kind of adapted through the past. So there's probably in our childhood, when we find that we have a very excessive throat chakra at times in our childhood, we were probably suppressed. And so, in order to kind of counteract that, we go to the other side, and now we have too much energy, and we're too much in that throat chakra. Now, on the other hand, when we have deficient energy of the throat, it can be about letting other people dominate the conversations. It can be difficulty putting our feelings or our thoughts into words. It can be a fear of speaking in public, or just speaking in general, and speaking to anybody in general. And so what a lot of people will find is they will relate to both sides of this, because when we have issues with the throat chakra, it's like on a spectrum, and it's not just like you have it or you don't have it. It's going to be kind of variations of it. So you may be excessive on one end in certain situations, and then you may fluctuate over to the other side and be more deficient with your energy. And this is very common and natural. And so sometimes when people say, I feel like I'm both, and they're kind of alarmed by that, it's not alarming at all. It's very, very common. So if you are interested in learning more about kind of the excessive versus deficient throat chakra, I go into more detail in episode 71, which is another episode on the throat chakra, and that was done like a couple years ago. So you can go and check that out. Or if you are in our Shadow Seekers membership, we have 2 full workshops on the throat chakra. And so if you've watched those already, maybe watch them again if you find that you're ready to start working with your throat in more depth. And if you are not a member of our Shadow Seekers membership and you're interested in balancing your chakras, I highly recommend you joining us. And we're going to be opening up either this week or next week with a very special offer for just a couple of days to get some new people in and give them the chance to join us. So I'll tell you a little bit more about that at the end. So, physical manifestations of the throat chakra are going to be typically in your neck. So, if you have disorders of the throat, of the ears, of the voice, the neck, if you notice that you get a stiff neck a lot. So, I have a lot of issues with my neck and I have a lot of issues with my throat chakra. And so, it's one that I am working on regularly. But when I end up with kind of my neck going out, I know that there are physical issues that I will take care of through physical methods. But I also don't want to ignore the energetic issues beneath it or below it, right, that are behind it. And so when you work to balance kind of the energy in your body or any like pains or aches or things that you have in your body, working at the physical level and at the energetic level helps to make that healing or whatever work you're doing that much more powerful. So, other physical manifestations of the throat chakra are tightness in your jaw, TMJ being one expression of that, thyroid or parathyroid problems. Somebody who has lots of colds and coughs probably also wants to look at the throat chakra. If you feel like you have immunity issues, the throat chakra is also a chakra to work with. So if you're somebody who like is the one always getting sick and other people around you aren't, but you're always the sick one, I would work with the throat chakra, and I would also consider working with the solar plexus as well because it has a connection to immunity as well. So I wanted to spend the rest of the episode talking about how to balance your throat chakra. So I have a lot of different methods today. Some of them are very simple. You can put them in practice right away. Some of them are more connected to the mundane. And then we also have some more magical and spiritual practices as well. And so hopefully you'll find 1 or 2 on this list or maybe more that you want to try out, especially if you find that you're someone who has blockages in your throat. And even if you don't have blockages in your throat, it's like with your physical body. So even if you don't have physical problems, you still want to do good things for your physical body, right? So you still want to move your body, you still want to eat well, you still want to get good sleep, even if you're in good physical health. So the same thing goes with our energetic body. So sometimes we'll see people who are like, I have no problems with my chakras. And then they think that they shouldn't do any energetic work. But I feel that we should always be doing energetic work, especially for spiritual people. It's always kind of mind blowing to me when people who are very spiritual don't take any time to do any energetic work. So even if you feel like the throat chakra is not one that you need to work on, bringing in some of these practices every once in a while is just going to ensure that your energy is moving well through your body. Any blockages that are, kind of in these lower energy centers are going to impact our ability to connect to sources of divinity outside of ourselves, which is often a goal of spiritual people. So the throat can really help you to connect outside of yourself. Okay, so let us start with some practices that are a little bit more mundane. And I'd love to hear in the comments too, like the more comments that we have when we're live, the better these feeds do. So let us know in the chat, how do you feel about your throat chakra? Do you think that your throat chakra is balanced? Do you think you have some imbalances? Does it feel excessive? Does it feel deficient? And then also let us know what you do to balance your throat chakra. And if you resonate with any of these practices I'm about to go through, let us know about that too. Okay, so we're going to start with some everyday mundane practices. So the very first one may be surprising to some people. This one is hydration and soothing the throat. So here's my question to you. Are you hydrated enough? And most people will say probably, and most people are probably not. So the reality is that we don't tend to hydrate quite enough. There are a lot of things that we do that deplete us of hydration, and especially if we're people who drink a lot of caffeine or coffee, things that are very dry or drying things. There are actually some foods in Ayurveda that are considered very drying, like crispy foods, dried apples and dried fruits and things like that are drying. They're good foods, but it means that you need to replace some of the moisture in your body. So really think about how much hydration do you get. Um, your physical care, like I said, is energetic care. I mean, from the perspective of a witch, there isn't a lot of difference. These are like layers stacked on top of each other. We can't really work with one or affect one without affecting the others. So, how much water do you drink a day? So, if you don't have an answer for that, I would suggest tracking it. Just check out how much do you drink a day. On the low end, according to Harvard Medical, a person should be drinking about 6 cups of water a day. On the high end, I've seen people talking about drinking 3 liters. That seems like a lot, but I will say that I have a friend who went to like a it's like a medical center in Mexico, and he went there because his stepdad has cancer and they're treating him there with some holistic practices. And so my friend went along and he did a kind of retreat, the spiritual, or I guess I should say like a cleanse and all kinds of things there. And while he was there, they told him that he wasn't drinking enough water, and the amount of water he was suggested to drink was like staggering amount. So we can be like, that can be a lot. Like if you are constantly needing to go to the bathroom, on one hand, that could be good because we do need to flush out toxins from the body. But on the other hand, it could indicate that you're drinking too much water. So everybody's needs may be a little bit different. But the reality is, if we're not getting at least the 6 cups of water, we're probably not getting enough. One thing that kind of a rule of thumb that I have heard that seems to work well for a lot of people is to drink, like, this is one of the hydro flasks. This is 32 ounces. If you drank 2 of these, that would be 64 ounces, which would be 8 cups of water. That should be a good amount for a person who's not super active during that day. Of course, if you're active and it's hot, you would need more water, right? So again, kind of thinking about how much hydration do you get, adding some honey or lemon to your water can also be very good for soothing your throat. So not only do we get the hydration of the throat chakra, but we'll also get some good soothing energy on the throat. Now, in Ayurveda, it is said that hydration is especially important as we age, and we're all aging. No matter what age we are right now, you are not going backwards in age. So as we age, hydration becomes even more and more important. In Ayurveda, it is said that some of the negative impacts that we experience as we age have to do with us not having enough hydration and too much dryness in the body. So really think about that. How much are you drinking? Now, as you drink your water, you can imagine doing this more mindfully. So imagine the liquid kind of washing away as it goes down your throat. Just really feel it. Don't do this mindlessly. Feel it as it goes down your throat. Imagine it washing away any stuck or stagnant energy that you have in your throat chakra. Now, some other kind of physical practices that might be a little more, might feel a little bit more on the mundane, but we can do some body work with the neck and with the jaw. So there are lots of problems that we experience because of our lifestyle. It's a very sedentary lifestyle that many of us have in the West. We sit at jobs. Jobs will force us. Some jobs force you at a desk for 8+ hours a day. Important to get up and do some moving. But what you are also may find is that because of the way you sit in your car, the way you sit in your chair, the way you sit in your at your desk when you're working on your computer or hunched over your phone, because we're always on the phone and we're always kind of many of us are looking down, is we get these neck problems, and people's necks will kind of tilt a little bit forward over time. So we want to try to combat that with doing some work with our neck. Gentle neck rolls. So like when you've been sitting for a while, bringing one ear to one shoulder and really opening up the opposite side of the neck, rolling the neck, and kind of doing these half moon motions with your neck can be very helpful. Jaw massage. So if you are somebody who gets a lot of tight tension in the jaw, taking some time to massage the neck and up into the jaw can be a very nice self practice that also is going to help you with your throat chakra imbalances. Opening up your mouth from time to time as well can help to relieve some of that tension as well. If you've ever heard of face yoga, or maybe you haven't heard of face yoga before, face yoga has a lot of practices for the jaw and for the lower half of the face and the mouth. And so if you become interested in that, Google face yoga and see if there are any exercises that are appealing to you, and that can also help to relieve some of this tension. But I definitely recommend at least a massage a couple times a day just to get in to these areas that don't get a lot of work done on them. If you are somebody who does, and then before I forget too, for those who are in our Shadow Seekers membership, we have multiple videos in our Kundalini energy work section of the membership portal where we have throat chakra practices that you can do. And they're usually about 30 minutes long, and you can always just take one or two exercises out. And again, if you are not in our Shadow Seekers membership, consider joining, especially if you are somebody who wants to balance your chakras. Yoga. So if you are someone who's into yoga, a couple of good poses for the throat chakra are fish pose. Shoulder stand is a difficult pose. It's one I will never teach on online yoga because I can't see people doing the pose. But if you are a more advanced yogi and you do yoga, shoulder stand is a good one. Plow pose, a little bit more accessible for people, though you do have to be careful to make sure your head is flat on the ground when you do it. And cat cow is actually a really good pose for the throat chakra because when you come into the cow part of the pose, you pull your heart forward, and then when you go into the cat part of it, you tuck the chin. And both of these actions will work on the throat chakra. So that's another thing. If you don't want to do a lot of these extensive practices, you could just think about opening your throat like this and then compressing it like this. And if you do that a little bit, that will also work your throat chakra. So another practice that might be considered more on the mundane side is having mindful communication. So really thinking about the way that you communicate, pausing before you speak and asking, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And we might be surprised to find that when we ask ourselves those questions, that one or more of them is not a yes. And so that is just something for you to reflect on in your own conversations. And I should say too, sometimes when we're talking about the throat, we're always talking about our conversations with other people, but what about the conversations with ourselves? So that's another thing. When you feel yourself like inner dialogue talking to yourself, that's throat chakra work as well. Asking yourself, is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? And the chances are, for much of what that inner dialogue is, you're not going to answer yes to all three of those questions. And that allows you to pause and to reflect on what you're saying to yourself. Practice active listening. So active listening can be hard. The world teaches us to be really fast, and it's getting even faster every day. But with active listening, we really try to hear what the person is saying. So a lot of times when we're in a conversation, they're talking and we're only kind of partially listening as we are thinking about how we're going to respond and waiting for it to be our turn to talk. And so with active listening, you let the person speak all the way through, and then you pause and take a breath, and then you talk. And so if you've never tried something like that before, try it. Try it as an exercise with a trusted friend, or maybe you have a witchy or spiritual friend who would also like to do a little throat chakra work with you, and try a practice like that. Don't stifle what needs to be said. Can't always be done. Sometimes what needs to be said is not safe to say. So you do have to consider that. But if you can, don't stifle what you need to say. Every time that we kind of swallow it down, it's going to cause impacts in the throat. When I was a little girl, I've told this many times. You've probably heard this before if you've listened and followed me for a while. But I was somebody who's very emotional. And so I grew up in a household that didn't really express emotions. And so I was always stifling my voice and always stifling my emotions. And it would feel like there was like a knife just like jabbing into my throat. And I didn't really understand at the time, I didn't know about chakras when I was a little kid. I didn't understand what was going on. As I got older and I started to learn more about the chakras, I started to understand that. And even as an adult, sometimes now, I will feel that kind of stabbing in my throat. And I know that's because I'm suppressing emotions. And so if you are somebody who is also finding yourself suppressing your emotions or suppressing your voice, one of the things you can do when you start to feel that kind of stabbing or that, that kind of restrictive energy in the throat is to just take a really deep breath and then exhale it out. And just see if you can let some of the energy dissipate rather than like clenching it off. Now, eventually, it's probably good for us to find an outlet for that voice, but at least in that moment, you can address some of those blockages by taking that nice deep breath and kind of dissipating some of that energy that you're about to suppress. After a difficult conversation, it can be good to journal and write down, what was said versus what needed to be said that wasn't said. So sometimes we have these difficult conversations. We don't say everything that we want to say, and then we just sort of go about our way after that. And then that's just kind of compounding any blockages in the throat we already have. But if you pause in reflection afterwards, and kind of say, what went right, what didn't go so great, what did I say that needed to be said versus what did I say, or did I not say that needed to be said. And then later in your shadow work, this gives you a jumping off point for something to work on in your shadow work. What is the why behind it? Why was it too difficult to say what needed to be said? And then, where did you experience that in other parts of your life? Kind of tracing that back to childhood and where it may have come from. You can see baby Corey behind me going up into the window. So let's talk now about some energetic practices. And before I go, though, I'm just going to go into the chat. So Chelsea said she feels her throat chakra is completely wrecked. She said she needs to do a lot of work. The good news is, you always have things to do. So sometimes people feel despair or they're not really sure, they think it's such a bad situation when they feel that their throat chakra is so blocked. But there's always practices that you can do. So if you take a couple of these ideas away after this and kind of put them into practice, hopefully it'll start helping a little bit. Rebecca says she has to continually work on hers to help open it up. She said her lower chakras need work, being blocked as well. And I'm somebody too. Like I feel like I am continually working on all of my chakras. So I really want to normalize it. Like, don't feel bad if you feel like you're doing continual work. Sometimes people think it means that they're not doing a good job, and that's not really how this works. It's us working through it. Eventually, the blockages start to release, and then we may notice that there are different ones that we couldn't see before because they were being masked by the easier ones. So just know it can be a lifetime of work of us just sort of balancing our energy. The same way we should always be working on our physical health as well. So Rebecca says she only drinks a few ounces of water, and so that is something to consider. I am also a terrible water drinker, and so that it's always kind of high up on my list, something to work on. Why is it so hard to drink water, to consume that? Sometimes people will say it's because of the taste or the lack of taste. Trying different things, like I like to put fruit tea bags into the water. And so it just gives it like a fruit taste or a mint taste or something. If you use mint tea, that can help. Something that's not caffeinated that will be dehydrating, but making a plan of how you will get a little bit more water. So, like a glass like this, I think is about 16 ounces. And so, if you could do, just starting by doing one of these a day is a big move for somebody who's only doing a few ounces. And here I've got juice in this one, cranberry juice, which, it has water content. So you will still get water content from juice and things like that. But starting slow, starting with like one glass and then moving on to two and then eventually three and just see how that goes. Chelsea said she just had the fifth espresso of the day and was literally munching on chips when you mentioned eating dry foods. And she said, I barely had any water today. Yeah. So, I only laugh because I will do similar things as well. So all those things are dehydrating, right? So that you want to now kind of think about where can I bring in some water. So Cindy says her jaws hurt a lot. And she said, this is very helpful. She said, I have trouble with the throat. Since age 8, I was told the image in the mirror was all my imagination. And she's referring to being able to see spirits from a very early age. She said, even now, my family thinks it's just in my head. Yeah, and there's probably nothing we'll be able to do to convince them otherwise, but we can continue to work on ourselves. And so, like, you can sense, you see it, having the pain in the jaw, have trouble with the throat. So again, just doing some of these practices, it doesn't mean that we necessarily would have to convince people of our own reality or our own truth, but just doing some of these practices could help to dissipate some of that stuck energy. So I have a family who is it's not possible for me to be true about what I do for a living and all of this stuff that I do with my family, who is very, very Christian. And so I understand, like Cindy, that is going to cause some blockages in my throat because I'm not able to speak my truth. And so what I do to combat that is do all of this work on my throat chakra. Felicia says, my throat chakra feels like it's starting to open, but it's been blocked for a long time. She said, I think I drink plenty of water now, but I used to drink just coffee in the past. Yeah. And so we do get water from coffee, but again, there's the dehydrating aspect. I noticed for me, like I was somebody who drank not a ton of coffee in the past, but I drank coffee like every day. And then I stopped drinking it at one point, and so now I only drink it every once in a while. But if I drink a cup of coffee, I have to go to the bathroom all the time, and we're basically peeing out a lot of water, right? And so that's dehydrating us further. So if you drink coffee, you just want to make sure that you balance it with a glass of water as well. But it's good. Felicia is noticing, her starting to open because she's been doing the work. And when we have had the throat chakra blocked for a long time, it takes the work to open it back up. Okay, so let's talk about some energetic practices now. So color therapy can be a good energetic practice for the throat chakra. So the color blue is the color of the throat chakra. It is like I think of this as like a cerulean sky blue. Um, I'm wearing my lapis, and so we're going to talk about stones in just a moment. I'm specifically wearing it tonight because of this episode. But that kind of cerulean sky blue is the color of this chakra, as opposed to the third eye, which sometimes is visualized as an indigo blue, like a much darker blue, closer to a purple. So anywhere that you can bring in the color blue, so blue candles, blue stones that we're going to talk about in a moment, blue clothing. If you are somebody like me who I just normally wear black, but bringing in a bit of blue into that kind of monotone black color can also be a way that we're bringing in the color of blue. Um, if you have the ability to paint a wall blue or something like that, or bring blue onto your altar space or somewhere in your house, bring in blue flowers. Blue stones. So some of my favorite for the throat chakra, aquamarine, lapis is my all-time favorite. So this necklace was a gift for many years ago, and it's one of my most prized possessions. And it's just this big, heavy piece of lapis. Lapis is a great one. Amazonite, sodalite is a good alternative to lapis because lapis can be kind of costly. Blue lace agate, blue kyanite. As always, my lists are never exhaustive. These just gives you an idea of some of my favorites. But any blue stone is going to be good for your throat chakra. Now you can visualize also with the color of blue. So you can do like color breathing where as you inhale, visualize breathing in the color blue and imagine it going to your throat chakra and kind of dissipating any blocked energy that's there. And then, of course, when you exhale, it kind of dissipates that further out. But you can imagine inhaling that color blue, and that can, and imagine that kind of swirling around in the throat chakra and just washing away any of the blockages that you have there. Now, in addition to color, we can also do some work with sound. So from singing bowls to tuning forks, it is said that the throat chakra frequency that is connected to the throat chakra is the key of G. G as in goat. So you can find tuning forks that are tuned to that key. You can find singing bowls that are specifically for the throat chakra. One of my kind of things I want to do eventually, it's quite expensive, but I would love to get a whole set of singing bowls, the 7 singing bowls, one for each of the chakras, and then start using those in our meditations and our Shadow Seekers membership. But if you are lucky enough to have some singing bowls, the throat chakra one is very nice for balancing your throat chakra. Humming, making sound. The seed sound of the throat chakra is hum. It's spelled H-A-M, but the A in Sanskrit is pronounced And so you can intone that sound. Seed sounds should be intoned from low in your body, not high up in your head. So if you were going to intone the sound hum, you would go hum. And you can repeat a seed sound, 3 times is always a good way. So some people like to do 7 times. You can do a minute of chanting the seed sound hum. But that can very much greatly open up your throat chakra. Mantras as well. So in Kundalini, we do a lot of mantras internally as ways to kind of keep up with our breath and keep up with the practice. But you can also chant mantras out loud. So a really nice mantra is Satanama. Satanama, so it translates roughly into birth, life, death, and rebirth. So it's a mantra that is used very much in meditation. So I like to bring my thumb to my pinky, sa, and then ring finger to pinky, ta, ring finger to thumb. So sa, ta, na, ma, sa, ta, na, ma. Sa, ta, na, ma. And we will sometimes say it internally, but we can also say it externally, say it out with your voice, and then you're activating your throat chakra even further. Another really nice mantra is Sat Nam. which is the mantra of the higher self and translates to truth is my identity. So anytime that we can express those out loud, we are further activating the throat. There's also the Brahmari breath, which is one of the quintessential breaths for the throat chakra. It's also excellent for anxiety and speaking. So in my educational therapy practice with the kids, they get nervous when they have to like speak in front of the class or do presentations. And so I always recommend that they go into the bathroom before or go somewhere where they can do this breath and do it a couple of times. And so what you do is you're going to plug your ears just by pressing them in so that the sound of your voice goes more internally and reverberates in your head. And then you make a humming noise. So it looks like this. And I did it kind of short there, but if you were doing a real practice of it, you would do it, you would try to hold it as long as you can, which is surprising. You can hold this a very long time because it doesn't take a lot of air to do this breath. And then you would, as soon as that was out, you've spent your air, you would inhale again and you would do it again. And so you can do this breath like 3 times is a great practice, 7 times, a couple of minutes. Like I said, excellent for anxiety, excellent for public speaking, and excellent for balancing the throat chakra. Now, in addition to color and to sound, we can also do affirmations. Affirmations, in a lot of ways, are like spoken spells. So some that are very good for the throat chakra, just a couple I made up. I allow my voice to be heard. So you can say that out loud. You can also whisper it. You can also think it in your head. You're listening, everything that goes on in your head is also still connected to the throat chakra. So in Kundalini, we sometimes say with like mantras that we say them out loud a certain number of times, we whisper them a certain number of times, and then we say them internally in our heads a certain number of times. And so you can do that with affirmations as well. So speak them out loud or speak them in your head, and they still are going to activate your throat chakra. So I allow my voice to be heard. My words carry clarity and compassion. I trust my inner truth. But you can also create affirmations of your own. So if you have certain limiting beliefs around any area of your life, you take that limiting belief and you transform it into a positive belief. So if I feel like, let's say someone thinks that no one wants to hear what they say, and maybe that's like in their heads, and then that is what's preventing them from speaking. So we could transform that is a mantra that you're saying in your head. So you're basically speaking a spell, but a negative one over and over and over to yourself. So we can transform that into something more positive to combat what's going on when we're saying the more negative ones. So no one wants to hear what I have to say can transform to I have important truths to speak, or something like that. And for everybody, it's going to look a little bit different. So let's also talk about some magical practices as well. But again, in the chat, feel free to let us know any other practices you've tried, or if any of these sound good to you. So magical practices, I have a throat chakra candle spell that I wanted to share with you. So I would recommend using a blue candle if you're going to do this. Carve into the candle a word related to the throat chakra, and perhaps truth or clarity or communication, or if you kind of pinpointed where your struggles with the throat chakra are, your word could relate to that. Alternatively, you could come up with like an affirmation or like an I am statement about the throat chakra, and then you could create a sigil around that statement, and then you could carve that into the candle. But do something, carve something into the candle, whether it's a word related to the throat chakra or a sigil. As your candle burns, you can visualize the blockages in your throat being melted away. And additionally, before you actually light the candle, if you want to use some oils, lavender is a really good oil for the throat chakra, and so it would be a really good one to anoint your candle with. Chamomile is also a really nice one. Both are very calming, and help us, you know, kind of soothe the energy of the throat chakra. And then, of course, an option here is to speak aloud, 3 times. Speak your intention to the candle or out to the universe so that you're actually activating the throat chakra. And that can be a little nice spell, kind of magical practice. So if you are somebody who wants to work on your throat chakra, you could start by doing a spell like that and then put into play a couple of these practices I've talked about. Maybe choose a mundane practice and maybe one of the energetic ones. Start with that spell and then start bringing these practices into your life and then see how you feel after a month. I usually recommend that people work, it's slow going. With some of this, you will see changes almost immediately, but to see the really big lasting changes, we got to stay at it for a while. So I recommend working through the chakras, work on it for a month, work on it for a week or two at the minimum, and then kind of see where you're at after that. So I also wanted, before we end and go into the Q&A, I also wanted to talk to you a little bit about different shadow work ideas for working with the throat chakra. So every chakra has a shadow side to it, which means that every chakra has things that we can work on in our shadow work, which will by default help to fix some of the blockages in that chakra. So you have your mundane practices, you have your kind of energetic practices, your magical practices, and then you also have your shadow work. So as we mentioned, lies was one area of kind of issues in the throat chakra. So explore the idea of telling lies. So what lies do you tell? What lies have you told? What lies have been told to you? Who told lies when you were growing up? What did you learn about telling lies? Were the adults very specific that lies are bad, or were they always telling them, or did they say they were bad but then they would tell them, being kind of hypocritical in that. So just kind of looking at what are the messages that you grew up with surrounding lies. And if you are, like I said earlier, if you are interested, we go into much greater detail into all of this in our Shadow Seekers membership. We have a whole workshop just on the shadow aspects of the throat. Habitual exaggeration. So sometimes, this is something I find myself doing sometimes. It's just like, say it's a little bit more than it is. It's not like telling lies, but it's a little bit bigger than it was. So kind of exploring in our shadow work what's the energy behind exaggerating. Why isn't the truth good enough, right? Exploring where does that come from? Who exaggerated while you were growing up? Who exaggerates in your life now? Why is it there? Why do you, if you are somebody who does that, why do you think you feel the need to exaggerate? Sometimes it can have to do with like not thinking that our experience is good enough, and so we want to make it a little bit better or bigger so that people will listen. So just kind of exploring that. And like with everything in shadow work, once we start to get to the heart of where this stuff comes from, then we get to choose whether we do it or not. Up until that point, a lot of it seems as though it's out of our control, like it's something that's being done. Passive aggressive communication. So kind of noticing, do you use passive aggressive communication? Do people around you use it? Now, you're not going to be able to fix everybody else's throat chakras. You can really only work on your own. And you can't force other people to do shadow work, but you can be aware when other people are coming at you from a place of an unhealed or an unbalanced throat chakra. And then you get to choose whether you engage or not. Like, sometimes it's not worth our time and our energy to argue or try to convince somebody whose throat chakra is so blocked and has so much stuck and stagnant energy in it, if they're not going to be willing to work on that. Not listening. So are there areas in your life where you don't listen to others? Are there certain people that you don't listen to? Are there certain kinds of people that you don't listen to? Who in your past didn't listen to you? What messages growing up were you taught about listening? Kind of looking at mom and dad. How did they communicate? How did they listen? And then how does that affect you today? You might see ancestral patterns, family patterns. You might have a family who's always talking over each other or is always keeping secrets. And so that kind of stuff can be done in some of your ancestral shadow work and some of your familial shadow work. We can kind of approach and attack that aspect. Raising your voice, talking over others. So if you do it or you notice other people doing it, kind of exploring back into your past. Especially if you are somebody who knows that you talk over others, that's going to be a sign of more of an excessive throat chakra. Where does it come from? Generally, it's going to come from either not really being able to express yourself as a kid or having a family who didn't let you express yourself or kind of negated what you were saying, or witnessing other people around you kind of talking over each other. So this is how this kind of familial shadow work works, is we witness other people doing it. It becomes ingrained in us from an early age before we even know how any of this works. And then later in adult life, we're doing it. But now you have the chance to work on it and to try to figure out where it comes from. And then you gain power back over it. Not listening to your intuition. Now, this is a big one for a lot of people. Intuition also is connected to the throat chakra, or to the third eye chakra, and to the sacral chakra. There's an intuition kind of component to that one. But in the throat chakra, our inability to listen to our own intuition. So where does that come from? That's something you can also explore in your shadow work. And not speaking your truth is another one. So there can be many different reasons that a person wouldn't speak their truth. So they might feel that they need to protect themselves. You might feel that you need to protect your identity as a witch. You might feel like you need to protect your anything about you, any way that you feel that you are being suppressed in the way that you identify or you would like to be known as, like anything like that is going to dampen down our throat chakra when we're not fully who we want to be and express who we want to be. So if you live in a place where you cannot express who you need to be, which you may find yourself in a place like that, it's important to find circles and groups of people where you can express yourself. So even if you live in a community where you're surrounded by people who would threaten you if they found out that you were a witch or pagan or anything like that, finding communities where you can express yourself is going to be very important in your ability to balance your throat chakra. And that's why, one of the many reasons I started the community Body, Mind, Witchcraft in the first place was to give people a place that they could express themselves. And then Shadow Seekers, is an extension of that, where we have even more space for people to express themselves. So I am going to now move into the Q&A, and also to let you know what's coming up. So I have one question that Cersei, she had messaged me about this, but I felt that it might benefit other people to hear this question and in my answer to it. So I wanted to talk about it here tonight. So Cersei said, I would love to hear more about Ganesha and your work with him. She said, I'm planning a rededication ritual for my birthday, and I'm not quite sure yet what I want to do for it. And she says, any suggestions? So I've been working with Ganesha for many years. I started working with him I've always had kind of a love for him and kind of an attraction and a connection to him as a god, and his myths in particular. I probably started working with him in about 2014 or 2015, and he quickly became a patron of mine at that time. He is a patron of my house. I still consider him a patron of my house. In fact, I worked with him just last night in my dark moon, new moon ritual. So I work with Ganesha up until very recently, I worked with him at both the full and the new moon. And he would just simply be the god that I would call. And I would usually call Lakshmi as the goddess at the full moon. I'd call Kali at the dark moon, but always call Ganesha. One of the things about Ganesha, for those who don't know, is in the Hindu pantheon, if you want to call and work with the other gods, it's traditional to call him first. And so it's very similar to the Orishas, where if you want to work with Orishas, you should consider calling Alegba first because he is the opener and he basically kind of clears the path for communication with some of the other gods and goddesses. So Ganesha works the same way. So even in Hindu homes where they have, like, let's say they have their patron is Lakshmi or Saraswati or somebody else, they will often have a altar built for Ganesha because of his importance is being the remover of obstacles. One of those obstacles is the obstacle of communicating with deity, and so he removes that. So I have a Ganesha statue on this altar. I have different various places in the home too where I connect to him. I have little I have a little small piece of labradorite that's carved into a Ganesha, and I hold it in my hand when I meditate with him. So one of the ways I work with him is through chanting. So my favorite chant for Ganesha is Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. I'll put that in the chat afterwards. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. You can use mala beads to chant 108 times if you want, or you can do the half of it, the 54, as you chant the chant to Ganesha, because it is an active chant. So it's a chant that people used thousands of years ago and is an active chant today. It carries a lot of energy with it, and to me, it is really the only evocation that you need. You can certainly write more evocation for Ganesha when you call him. You can write in English an evocation, but all you really truly need is that mantra, and the mantra itself is an evocation, but also a form of giving him an offering as well. So normally what I will do is I will chant Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha. I chant it 54 to 108 times, depending on how much time I have, using the mala beads. And then I sing a song that I did not write. This is the same chant, but I set this chant to music, and I sing the chant. And so I will sing the chant for you guys now. Under Shadow Seekers membership, I am planning to actually make a whole practice video for those who want to work with Ganesha, which has me singing this for several minutes, and then you can use this as a meditation or a practice of your own. But I will sing it here. Om Gam Ganapataye Om. Om Gam Ganapataye Om. Oh, Ganesha, Ganesha, Ganapataye Om. Namaha, Namaha, oh, 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 oh. And then you can repeat it as many times as you want. And so I will usually repeat it 3 times, and then I consider that an offering to him. And then Ganesha loves fruit, especially bananas. So then I will leave him whatever fruit I have. Hopefully it's bananas, but I've also given him oranges he seems to like, and berries. Any sweet things he's got a sweet tooth. And so I leave him offerings. And then from there, it's up to you what kind of working you want to do. Sometimes I just sit in contemplation and I listen to him, what guidance he gives me. Or you could, have a candle that you light, and you could then dedicate, like kind of rededicate yourself, like you were saying, for anybody who's doing like a rededication practice, kind of rededicate yourself to the path. Ask Ganesha to remove any obstacles along the path and clear them out of your way. And then from there, you can do whatever else you want to do, but you can also close the ritual down at that point. So, like I said, I've been working with him for many years. And recently, I started working with a few of the Orishas at the full moon, which means now I'm working with Ganesha on new moon, dark moon. But but he's always present in my life. And in fact, a few years ago, when I had an ectopic pregnancy and I had a near-death experience, as they were wheeling me down into the operating room, because this was such a serious issue, I passed out, lost consciousness, but I remember him in the at the end of the hall, and it's very clearly I can still remember him there. So just a great deity to work with. Lovely question, and I just wanted to share my experiences, and hopefully it helps not only Cersei but anybody else who wants to work with Ganesha. All right, so if anybody else has any questions, you can put them in the chat, and it doesn't have to necessarily be about the throat chakra. It could be anything related to magic, witchcraft, energy work, shadow work. While I'm waiting to see if anybody else has any remaining questions, let's just tell you about what's coming up. So our Shadow Seekers membership, like I said, it's going to be opening up either this week or next week for a flash sale. It's only going to be open for 3 days because we're not really opening again till near the end of the year. And I just wanted to, we haven't been open for a while. So I wanted to give people the opportunity to join us because we talk about it a lot in these lives and how we take the material here at these lives and we have so much more of it in the membership. So I want to give people the chance to join if they'd like. The membership helps people kind of balance your energy, work through your shadow work, and we do a lot of other things as well. We do some astrology, we do a lot of energy work, we have Kundalini practices, we have live yoga, we have office hours where people can just drop in and talk about what they're working on. We have accountability groups that you can sign up for, so you get matched up with a couple of other members or just one other member, so you have some accountability. So there's just a lot. We have live rituals, live workshops, and we have a membership portal that has all of our replays. So a lot of great things in the membership, and if you are looking for that kind of space, a space with some like-minded people to kind of get in and really do this spiritual work together, we might be the place for you. So watch for that coming soon. If you are not already on our mailing list, make sure to sign up, especially if you feel you might be interested in the membership, because I primarily will be sending out information about the membership to the mailing list. So I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the chat where you can sign up for the mailing list if you have not already done so. And if you're watching back on YouTube later, that link will be in the description of the video. So our Demystifying Witchcraft course will also be opening up very soon, and that is my signature course on witchcraft. It takes you through all of the various different building blocks of witchcraft, from casting a circle to calling the quarters, working with deities, writing spells, timing, lunar timing, solar timing, Sabbats, Esbats, all of it's in there. And it's a growing course, which means I plan to add to it in the future. And at any point when you buy it, you get all of the future stuff for free. So good time to buy it now when it's going to be low priced, and it's going to be coming out, I believe, the very beginning of October. It's going to be our lowest price. As of right now, it's the lowest price it's going to be, and then it is going to increase in price because next year I've decided that I'm going to re-record the entire course, and you get all of the extra new stuff with it, no matter when you buy the course. So anyway, watch for more information on that. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, our Body Mind Witchcraft YouTube channel. All of these replays get fed onto there later, and that way you won't miss any future episodes. And leave a heart or a thumbs up somewhere in the video. That helps us get it out to the feed of more people. And then for those of you who are in our Body Mind Witchcraft Facebook group, and that's where you primarily watch these lives, make sure that you interact with the material in our Body Mind Witchcraft group. So we are having some major issues. I have been some of my content has been reported by someone, and it's suppressing my reach, and it's really pissing me off. And so if you can do me a favor, those who care about the group, just make sure that you go into the group. If you're not seeing it coming up in your feed, make sure to go into the group and comment on things and like things in the group. And then that helps the algorithm know that like our content is important to people. Otherwise, it just continues to get suppressed. And sadly to say, if it continues to get suppressed more and more and more, I don't know that Jezadora and I will have the ability to put so much of our time into this group. We'll always continue to do our paid groups, but I'm not sure we'll be able to continue to do this group if we're not reaching anybody. So for example, we have a post that goes out on Tuesdays that used to have 50 people would have commented on it by now. I looked at it today and there's 12 people have commented on it. And it isn't about the people in the group. It's just that Facebook isn't feeding it in the algorithm. I have the feeling it has to do with some of these complaints that have been coming in from someone about our content, which I'm going to get to the bottom of. But until then, you can help me out and help our group out by liking our content and commenting on it and just showing the algorithm that it's important to you. So until next time, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that it gives you some food for thought on how to balance your throat chakra. If you ever have any questions, you can always reach out to me or comment below the videos. And until next time, blessed be.